Most people think power is loud. They think power explains. They think power reacts. They're wrong. Power is stillness. Power is the ability to do nothing when everyone expects a response. Power is the discipline to remain unmoved while others burn energy trying to provoke you. This audiobook will show you why stillness is not weakness, it is leverage. Why silence wins negotiations, dominance, and respect. And why the person who controls their reactions controls the room. If you learn this, you stop being managed by emotion, you stop being predictable, and you become untouchable. Reaction is surrender. That is not a metaphor, that is a rule. Every time you react emotionally, you hand control to whoever pulled the trigger. They moved you. They set the tempo. They decided the direction. You didn't choose. You responded. And power never lives in response. Power lives in control. You have a choice. Most people don't realize that reaction is optional. They believe emotion is authority. They believe impulse is honesty. They believe speed equals strength. That belief is why they stay weak. When someone insults you and you fire back immediately, you didn't win, you complied. When someone pressures you and you explain yourself on the spot, you didn't clarify, you submitted. When someone provokes you and you rush to defend, you didn't protect your dignity, you exposed it. That's the key. High-status individuals pause by default. Not because they're slow, not because they're confused, but because they understand something most people never learn. The first move after a trigger is the most dangerous one. You have a choice. Watch powerful people closely. They don't rush. They don't scramble for words. They don't chase validation in real time. They delay. That delay is not hesitation, it is calculation. It is discipline. It's not about being passive, it's about being precise. Stillness is leverage. The moment something happens, an insult, a challenge, a demand, there is a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is small for most people, almost invisible. And that's why they're controlled. They react before they think, they speak before they decide, they move before they measure. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need permission to breathe. You don't need permission to think. You don't need permission to choose silence. That's the key. The person who reacts first is the person who lost the frame. They accepted the other person's timeline. They accepted the other person's emotional agenda. Whoever reacts first loses leverage. Repeat that until it rewires you. Whoever reacts first loses leverage. Reaction feels powerful in the moment. It feels like release, like justice, like strength. But that feeling is temporary, and the cost is permanent. You say something you can't take back. You reveal what bothers you. You show where the pressure points are. And once people know where to press, they press harder. It's not about anger, it's about discipline. It's not about being right, it's about being in control. You have a choice. Here is the hard truth. Most emotional reactions are habits, not necessities. You learned them, you rehearsed them, you repeated them. Which means you can unlearn them. Start with this rule. Nothing emotional deserves an immediate response. Nothing. Not praise, not criticism, not pressure, not disrespect. Delay is your first act of control. When someone provokes you, do nothing. Let the moment hang. Let the silence stretch. Your nervous system will panic at first. It will tell you to speak, to correct, to defend. Ignore it. That discomfort is weakness leaving your body. That's the key. High-status people are comfortable with tension. They don't rush to resolve it. They let it work for them. Because tension makes other people talk.
Tension makes other people over-explain. Tension makes other people reveal intent. Stillness turns the spotlight outward. You have a choice. You can react and be readable, or you can pause and become unpredictable. Predictable people are easy to manage. Unpredictable people command respect. This is why calm people dominate chaotic environments. They are not adding energy, they are absorbing it. And the one who absorbs controls. Here's what you do in real life. When triggered, count silently, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Not to calm down, to assert control. When pressured for an answer, say less, not more. I'll think about it. Noted. We'll see. Short, neutral, emotionless. You don't need their permission to take time. That's the key. Stop explaining yourself to people who are emotional. Explanations feed reactions. Reactions feed loss of leverage. Silence starves manipulation. And understand this clearly. The goal is not to suppress emotion. The goal is to delay action. You can feel everything, you just don't act on it immediately. It's not about feeling less, it's about choosing better. That's the key. Most people think control means domination. It doesn't. Control means ownership of your responses. If someone else can make you react, they own you in that moment. If they can make you angry, rushed, defensive, or desperate, they are driving. Stillness takes the wheel back. You have a choice. This chapter is not asking you to be silent forever. It's teaching you when silence creates power. Later, you can speak. Later, you can act. But now, you pause. And in that pause, everything changes. Because once you stop reacting, you start controlling. And once you start controlling, people feel it. They speak differently. They push less. They test you less. Not because you argued, not because you proved anything, but because you didn't move when they expected you to. That's the key. Master this and you break the first chain, the chain of impulsive surrender. You stopped reacting, you started controlling. Now you're ready to learn what emotions actually are and how to use them without being used. You've taken your power back. Now let's sharpen it.
Motion is not the enemy. Misusing emotion is. Most people make the same mistake their entire lives. They treat emotion like an order, like a command that must be obeyed immediately. They feel angry, so they act angry. They feel afraid, so they retreat. They feel excited, so they rush. That's not awareness. That's automation. And automated people are controllable people. You have a choice. Emotion is data. Nothing more, nothing less. It tells you something is happening. It does not tell you what to do about it. That's the key. High-level individuals understand this difference deeply. They allow emotion to register, but they don't allow it to drive. Think of emotion like a dashboard light. When a warning light turns on, you don't smash the dashboard. You don't panic and swerve the car. You observe, you assess, you decide. But emotional people do the opposite. They let the warning light grab the steering wheel, and that's why they crash. You don't need their permission to feel something without acting on it. Most people confuse intensity with truth. They believe that because a feeling is strong, it must be followed. That belief is dangerous. Strong emotions are often the least reliable ones. Anger distorts judgment. Fear shrinks options. Euphoria kills patience. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. You have a choice. When emotion hits, pause and label it. That's it. This is anger. This is anxiety. This is excitement. Not out loud, internally. The moment you label it, you create distance. Distance creates control. That's the key. Untrained people become their emotions. Trained people observe them. Observation turns chaos into clarity.
Let's be clear about something uncomfortable. Most people don't actually want control. They want relief. Reaction gives relief. Control gives results. That's the trade. When someone insults you and you snap back, you feel relief. For 5 seconds. Then the consequences arrive. When someone pressures you and you comply emotionally, you feel relief. Until resentment sets in. Short-term relief destroys long-term leverage. Stillness preserves it. You have a choice. Emotion rises automatically. Action does not. That gap between feeling and doing is where power lives, and most people never enter it. They live their lives like open circuits. Stimulus in, reaction out. No filter, no delay, no authority. That's the key. Here's the truth no one tells you. Emotional expression is easy. Emotional regulation is rare. And rarity creates value. Calm people are trusted. Stable people are promoted. Measured people are respected. Not because they suppress emotion, but because they don't leak it. Leaking emotion gives people access to you. Access creates leverage over you. You don't need their permission to close that access. Here's a practical rule you must install immediately. Never make decisions at the emotional peak. Never. Not emails, not messages, not promises, not confrontations. Wait for the emotional wave to pass, then decide. That's not avoidance, that's intelligence. That's the key. Most regret comes from decisions made at emotional extremes. Anger, fear, desperation, ego. You don't rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your emotional discipline. So build it. When you feel something strongly, do nothing physical. No texting, no calling, no explaining. Let the emotion exist without expression. This will feel unnatural at first because you're breaking conditioning. You were trained to vent, to express, to get it out. But venting is not mastery, it's leakage, and leakage weakens your position. You have a choice. This chapter is not telling you to be cold, it's telling you to be precise. Precision requires restraint. The world rewards people who can feel deeply and act deliberately. That combination is rare, that combination is powerful. That's the key. When someone manipulates emotionally, they rely on urgency. They want you to feel first and think later. When you don't follow that order, their strategy collapses. No reaction, no fuel. Emotion acknowledged, action delayed. You take control back. Notice how often people say, "I couldn't help it. I just felt like I had to." That sentence is a confession of weakness. You can always help it. You just weren't trained to. Now you are. Stillness doesn't mean you ignore emotion. It means you extract information from it. Ask yourself, what is this feeling pointing to? A boundary? A threat? An opportunity? An insecurity? Then decide, not react. That's the key. High performers do not eliminate emotion, they subordinate it. Emotion works for them, not on them. This is why calm people dominate negotiations, why they win arguments without raising their voice, why they outlast emotional storms. They don't confuse information with instruction. You have a choice. Every time emotion arises, you are being tested, not by the situation, by yourself. Will you obey the feeling, or will you use it? Use it and you grow. Obey it and you stay predictable. Predictable people are easy to control. Unreactive people are impossible to corner. That's the key. You've now learned the second layer of stillness. First, you stopped reacting. Now you understand what emotion really is. Information, not instruction. And once you master this, something changes permanently. You stop being driven. You start deciding. You don't disappear emotionally. You become deliberate. You are no longer at the mercy of your inner weather. You've learned to read it without letting it steer. And now that you understand emotion, it's time to learn how to use silence itself as a tool. You've controlled the impulse, you've decoded the feeling. Now, let's talk about the quietest and sharpest weapon you have.
Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. Most people fear silence because they don't control it. They rush to fill it. They talk to relieve it. They explain to escape it. And that is exactly why silence works. You have a choice. Silence creates pressure, and pressure reveals truth. When you stay silent, something happens inside the other person. Their mind starts working, their insecurity starts speaking, their need for control starts leaking. Silence turns the spotlight outward. That's the key. People who talk too much think silence is weakness. It isn't. Silence is restraint, and restraint signals strength. High-status individuals are not afraid of pauses. They are comfortable letting moments hang. They understand that whoever rushes to speak first is usually the one who needs something. Neediness is loud. Authority is quiet. You have a choice. In conversations, arguments, negotiations, silence shifts power immediately. When someone makes a demand and you respond instantly, you validate the demand. When someone accuses and you defend right away, you legitimize the accusation. When someone provokes and you react, you reward the behavior. Silence does the opposite. Silence says, "I am not moved." Silence says, "Your urgency is not mine." Silence says, "You don't control the pace." That's the key. Most manipulation relies on speed. Fast pressure, fast emotion, fast response. Silence breaks that rhythm. It slows the exchange. It disrupts expectation. It forces recalibration. And when people are forced to recalibrate, they reveal themselves. Watch what happens when you don't respond immediately. People start talking more. They over-explain. They justify. They contradict themselves. Not because you asked, but because silence made them uncomfortable. You don't need their permission to let silence work. Silence is especially powerful in conflict. When someone is emotional, they want engagement. They want reaction. They want friction. Silence denies them all three. It's not about winning the argument. It's about ending the game. That's the key. Most arguments die when one person refuses to feed them. No counterattack, no defense, no emotional fuel. Just stillness. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you choose when. Timing is power. Speak too early and you expose yourself. Speak too late and you've already won. You have a choice. Here's how silence works psychologically. Humans are wired to interpret silence as judgment. When you stay quiet, the other person fills the gap with their own assumptions. They start wondering, did I say too much? Did I miscalculate? Did I lose position? Silence makes people self-correct. Words rarely do. That's the key. This is why calm leaders dominate chaotic rooms. They don't talk over noise. They let the noise burn itself out. Then they speak once, clearly, briefly. And when they speak, it lands heavier, because silence gave it weight. Words backed by silence carry authority. Words backed by emotion carry need. You have a choice. If you want respect, reduce your words. If you want leverage, increase your pauses. Stillness before speech is what gives speech power. Here's a practical rule. Never rush to fill silence. Not on calls, not in meetings, not in arguments, not in negotiations. Let the pause exist. If it feels uncomfortable, that's good.
Discomfort means pressure. Pressure creates advantage. That's the key. Most people sabotage themselves by over-talking. They add unnecessary explanations. They weaken strong positions with extra words. Silence protects strong positions. If your stance is solid, you don't need to defend it loudly. Think about this. The strongest presence in a room is often the quietest one. Not because they are shy, but because they are centered. Centered people don't chase attention. They attract it. You have a choice. Silence also protects you from revealing too much. Every extra word is data. Every emotional sentence is information someone else can use. Silence keeps your inner world private. Privacy creates mystery. Mystery creates respect. That's the key. When someone tries to provoke you publicly, silence robs them of victory. They expected a show. They get nothing. No reaction means no payoff. Over time, people stop testing those who don't react, because testing without reward is pointless. Stillness trains others how to treat you. Let that sink in. Your reactions educate people. Your silence conditions them. You have a choice. This chapter is not teaching avoidance, it's teaching economy. Say only what must be said. Say it when it matters. Say it without emotion. Everything else is noise. Silence is how you conserve energy. Energy is finite, and those who waste it emotionally have less for action. Stillness is efficiency. That's the key. There will be moments when silence feels like you're losing, when you could say something clever, when you could defend yourself. Let it pass. Winning the moment often costs you the long game. Silence protects the long game. You are not here to impress. You are here to control your position. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. And understand this clearly. Silence is most powerful when it's intentional. Not frozen, not fearful, chosen. Chosen silence communicates confidence. Fearful silence communicates weakness. The difference is internal. Stillness backed by self-control is felt immediately. That's the key. When you combine what you've learned so far, stopping reaction, understanding emotion, using silence, something changes fundamentally. You stop leaking power. People feel it, they adjust to it, they treat you differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because your presence required it. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer easy to read. And what can't be read can't be controlled. You've learned how silence works on others. Now it's time to learn what stillness does to you, how it reshapes your internal state and your external rank. You've disarmed emotion. You've weaponized silence. Now, let's go deeper.
Being readable is a liability. Most people don't understand this. They think transparency equals honesty. They think expression equals strength. It doesn't. Readability makes you predictable. Predictability makes you controllable. That's the chain. You have a choice. Every reaction you show teaches people how to handle you, what excites you, what angers you, what pressures you. And once they know, they adjust. Stillness breaks that cycle. When you stop reacting, people lose their map. They don't know what works. They don't know what doesn't. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, and discomfort shifts power. That's the key. High-status individuals are difficult to read, not because they're hiding, but because they're regulated. Their inner state doesn't leak outward. They don't broadcast frustration. They don't advertise insecurity. They don't signal fear. This makes them unpredictable, and unpredictability commands respect. You have a choice.
Most manipulation relies on pattern recognition. People test, they observe, they adjust. Push here, he reacts. Praise there, she opens up. Apply pressure, he folds. Stillness removes the feedback loop. No signal, no adjustment, no leverage. That's the key. Unreadable people force others to operate blind, and blind people hesitate. Hesitation gives you time. Time gives you control. Think about negotiations. Think about conflict. Think about relationships. The person who reveals less always has more power. Not because they're dishonest, but because information is currency, and most people give it away for free. You don't need their permission to keep your inner world private. Stillness doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't display everything you feel. Display is a choice. Emotion does not require exhibition. That's the key. When people can't read you, they project. They fill the silence with their own assumptions. They start guessing, second-guessing, overthinking. And in that mental noise, they weaken. Stillness shifts effort away from you and onto them. You conserve energy. They spend it. You have a choice. Here's what unreadable behavior looks like in practice. Neutral facial expression, steady tone, minimal words. Not cold, not aggressive, centered. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't change. No spike, no dip. That consistency is confusing to emotional people. Confusion creates caution. That's the key. Most people overshare because they fear being misunderstood, but clarity does not require disclosure. You can be clear without being open. You can be firm without being emotional. Strong boundaries don't require explanation. Explanation invites negotiation. Stillness ends it. You don't need their permission to stop explaining yourself. Every time you explain, you give someone something to push against. Stillness gives them nothing, and nothing is hard to fight. You have a choice. Unreadable people are respected because they cannot be easily classified. You don't know their limits. You don't know their breaking point, so you move carefully. People don't test what they can't read. They test what looks says reactive. This is why calm individuals are rarely disrespected openly, not because they're intimidating, but because they're ambiguous. Ambiguity is power. That's the key. Stillness also protects you from internal chaos. When you stop expressing every emotion, you stop reinforcing it. Emotion fades faster when it isn't performed. Most people rehearse their emotions publicly. They keep them alive. Stillness lets them pass. You gain internal stability, and stability changes how people treat you. You have a choice. This chapter is not telling you to be distant. It's telling you to be selective. Selectivity signals value. People who are always available emotionally are taken for granted. People who are measured are respected. Stillness sets that boundary without words, and boundaries enforced without emotion are the strongest kind. That's the key. Understand this clearly. The goal is not mystery for its own sake. The goal is control of information flow. Reveal when it serves you, withhold when it doesn't. That is strategy. Stillness gives you that control. Once people realize they can't read you, they change behavior. They slow down. They choose words carefully. They respect space, not because you asked, because uncertainty demanded it. You have a choice. This is how you move through the world with quiet authority, not loud, not performative, grounded. When you stop broadcasting emotion, you stop being managed by others' expectations. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer transparent. You are composed.
and composition is dominance without aggression. That's the key. You've learned how stillness affects others. You've learned how silence shifts dynamics. You've learned how unreadability protects leverage. Now it's time to confront a difficult truth most people avoid. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. They are usually compensating. You've mastered being unreadable. Now let's dismantle the illusion of loudness itself.
Loudness is not strength. It's exposure. Most people misunderstand volume. They think the one who speaks the most commands the room. They think intensity equals authority. It doesn't. Volume is often compensation. Noise is often insecurity trying to sound convincing. That's the key. You have a choice. When someone raises their voice, talks over others, or floods a situation with words, pay attention. They are not asserting power, they are trying to create it. Real power doesn't need amplification. High-status individuals don't compete for attention. They let attention come to them. They speak less because they don't need to prove presence. They don't dominate conversations because dominance doesn't require constant signaling. Silence already established their position. You have a choice. Look at arguments. The loudest person is usually the most emotional. The most emotional person is usually the least controlled, and the least controlled person is the easiest to manipulate. That's the chain. It's not about anger, it's about discipline. Loudness feels powerful in the moment because it releases pressure, but release is not control. Release is leakage. When you raise your voice, you give away your internal state. You announce frustration, you reveal urgency, and urgency weakens position. That's the key. Think about leaders you respect. They don't shout to be heard. They don't argue to be right. They wait. They speak once, and when they do, people listen. Because silence created weight. Words without weight are just noise. You have a choice. Overcommunication is a hidden weakness. Explaining too much, justifying too long, repeating yourself to force agreement. All of it signals the same thing. I need you to understand me. And need kills leverage. You don't need their permission to be brief. Short statements communicate confidence. Long explanations communicate doubt. It's not about clarity, it's about control. That's the key. Most people talk themselves out of strong positions. They start with a firm stance. Then they add extra words. Then they soften. Then they negotiate against themselves. Silence would have protected them. Stillness would have held the line. Loudness breaks it. You have a choice. The loudest person often fears being ignored. They fear irrelevance. They fear losing attention. So they increase volume, they increase speed, they increase emotion. And in doing so, they lose respect. Respect is given to those who don't chase it. That's the key. Understand this clearly. People measure power subconsciously. They watch who reacts, who interrupts, who rushes. The one who stays calm while others escalate is automatically elevated. Calm creates hierarchy. Not because it's aggressive, but because it's rare. You have a choice. If you want authority, reduce your verbal footprint. Say what matters, then stop. Let silence do the rest. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, so they assume something is wrong. They start talking. They start filling space, and in doing so, they reveal insecurity. Silence exposes imbalance. That's the key. This doesn't mean you never speak passionately. It means you don't live there. Emotion is a tool, not a default setting.
When you use intensity sparingly, it has impact. When you use it constantly, it becomes background noise. Power is contrast. Stillness creates contrast. You have a choice. Notice how people react when you stop competing vocally, when you don't interrupt, when you don't rush to respond. They lean in, they wait, they listen. Not because you demanded it, because your restraint changed the rhythm. Rhythm is power. The person who sets the pace sets the tone. The person who sets the tone controls the interaction. Loud people follow the moment. Quiet people shape it. That's the key. Here's a practical rule you must adopt. Never try to overpower noise with more noise. If a room is loud, get quieter. If someone is emotional, get calmer. If chaos rises, slow down. Opposition amplifies chaos. Contrast neutralizes it. You have a choice. When someone raises their voice at you, don't mirror it, lower yours. That single act flips the dynamic. They escalate, you descend, and suddenly they look unstable, you look grounded. Grounded people are trusted, unstable people are managed. That's the key. Loudness also traps you internally. The more you perform emotion, the more you reinforce it. You keep your nervous system activated, you stay reactive. Stillness calms the system, and a calm system thinks clearly. Clear thinking beats loud emotion every time. You have a choice. This chapter is not asking you to disappear. It's asking you to be deliberate. There's a difference between presence and performance. Presence doesn't need volume. Performance does. Stop performing your emotions. Let your actions speak. Let your boundaries speak. Let your silence speak. That's the key. When you stop being the loudest, something shifts. You stop being pulled into unnecessary conflict. You stop being baited into emotional traps. People test loud people. They provoke them. They avoid calm people because calm people don't give reactions for free. You don't need their permission to withdraw from noise. Noise drains energy. Energy is finite. Those who waste it on loudness have less for execution. Stillness conserves it. You have a choice. The strongest individuals in any room are rarely the most vocal. They are the most composed. They speak when it matters. They stop when it doesn't. And when they speak, the room adjusts. Not because of volume, because of authority. Authority doesn't shout, it settles. That's the key. You've now dismantled another illusion. Loudness is not leadership. Intensity is not dominance. Stillness is. You've learned how reaction leaks power, how emotion misleads action, how silence applies pressure, how unreadability protects leverage, and now how noise exposes weakness. With each layer, you are becoming harder to move, harder to provoke, harder to control. Now it's time to understand why this calm state is more than defense. It's an advantage, a competitive one. You've reduced noise, you've reclaimed energy. Now let's learn how calm becomes your edge.
Calm is not a personality trait. It's a weapon. Most people treat calm like a luxury, something you have after things settle, something reserved for quiet moments. That's backwards. Calm is most powerful before the chaos, during pressure, inside conflict. That's the key. You have a choice. In any competitive environment, work, negotiation, relationships, the calm person has an edge that emotional people cannot access. Why? Because calm preserves clarity. Clarity preserves options. Options create leverage. Emotional people lose options. They narrow their field of vision. They rush. Rushing is expensive. Calm people see more.
They hear more, they notice what others miss, and the one who sees more wins more. That's the key. Pressure exposes training. Under stress, most people revert to impulse. Their voice changes, their breathing shortens, their thinking collapses. Calm individuals do the opposite. Their nervous system stays regulated. Their speech stays measured. Their decisions stay deliberate. That contrast is felt immediately. You don't need their permission to slow down. Calm signals competence. When others panic, they look for stability. They follow the person who doesn't flinch. Leadership emerges from regulation, not authority. That's the key. Think about high-stakes situations, deadlines, conflicts, crises. Who becomes valuable? Not the loudest, not the fastest, the calmest. Because calm people don't add chaos to chaos, they subtract it. And subtraction is power. You have a choice. Most people sabotage themselves by matching emotional intensity. They think escalation equals engagement. It doesn't. Escalation hands away your edge. Calm breaks escalation. When you stay calm while others intensify, you create an imbalance. They look unstable. You look grounded. Grounded people are trusted. Unstable people are managed. That's the hierarchy. That's the key. Calm also gives you time. Time to think, time to decide, time to wait. Waiting is a competitive skill. Those who can't wait overpay. They concede early. They agree too fast. Calm people wait until the other side reveals urgency. Urgency always leaks. Silence plus calm equals pressure. You have a choice. Here's what calm looks like behaviorally. Slower speech, fewer words, even tone. Not detached, not cold, controlled. Control is visible. Your body speaks before your mouth does. A steady posture communicates certainty. Relaxed breathing communicates confidence. People read these signals unconsciously. That's the key. Calm is also contagious. One regulated person can stabilize an entire group. One emotional person can destabilize it. Organizations promote stabilizers. They sideline agitators. Not because stabilizers are nicer, because they're reliable. Reliability wins. You have a choice. Understand this clearly. Calm does not mean indecision. Calm allows better decisions. When you are calm, you can say no without emotion. You can set boundaries without aggression. You can delay without guilt. Guilt is an emotional tax. Calm people don't pay it. That's the key. Most people believe they must care loudly to be taken seriously. They don't. Results don't require emotional display. In fact, emotional display often undermines credibility. Calm makes your words heavier. Emotion makes them slippery. Choose weight over noise. You have a choice. In competitive spaces, people watch who breaks first, who gets rattled, who loses composure. They remember it. Calm protects your reputation. Once you're seen as unshakable, people adjust behavior around you. They choose words carefully. They escalate less. They negotiate differently. Because they know pressure won't move you. That's the key. Calm also protects your energy. Emotional reactivity is exhausting. It drains focus. It drains stamina. Calm conserves. And conservation allows endurance. Endurance outperforms bursts of intensity. You have a choice. Here's a rule you must internalize. Never let someone else's urgency become your emergency. Urgency is a tactic. Calm neutralizes it. If someone rushes you, slow down. If someone pressures you, pause. That pause restores balance. That's the key. Calm also sharpens listening. When you're not emotionally charged, you hear what's said and what's avoided. You notice tone shifts. You catch contradictions. You see leverage points. Emotional people miss these details. They're too busy reacting. Calm people collect information. Information creates advantage. You have a choice. This chapter is teaching you that calm is not passive defense. It is active positioning. You are placing yourself above the emotional noise, not because you think you're better, but because you're disciplined. Discipline compounds. Every time you choose calm, you strengthen the habit. Every time you react emotionally, you weaken it. Habits become identity. Identity becomes reputation. Reputation becomes leverage. That's the chain. That's the key. Now, understand this. Calm without boundaries becomes weakness. Calm must be paired with restraint. You've learned how calm gives you an edge. Now you must learn how to maintain it under direct pressure. Because the real test comes when someone tries to hook your nervous system. You've built calm. You've protected it. Now, let's talk about what truly determines how others rank you before you say a word.
Before you speak, you are already ranked. Before you act, you are already assessed. People don't evaluate you logically first. They feel you. And what they feel comes from your nervous system. That's the key. You have a choice. Your nervous system is broadcasting information at all times. Tension, ease, urgency, stability. Others pick it up instantly without thinking. A regulated nervous system signals safety, confidence, authority. A dysregulated one signals threat, insecurity, volatility. And humans organize themselves around these signals automatically. This is why some people walk into a room and gain respect without effort, and others talk endlessly and still aren't taken seriously. It's not about words, it's about state. That's the key. Most people try to act confident. They miss the point. Confidence is not performance, it's physiology. If your breathing is shallow, your body tense, your movements rushed, your body is saying, I am under threat. And when your body says that, others treat you accordingly. They talk over you, they pressure you, they test you, not consciously, instinctively. You have a choice. Status is regulated calm under pressure. Animals understand this, children understand this, adults forget it. The one who stays regulated becomes the reference point. The one who spikes becomes background noise. That's the hierarchy. That's the key. Think about moments when you've lost influence. You were rushed. You were anxious. You were reactive. Your words may have been right. Your logic may have been solid. It didn't matter. Your nervous system gave you away. You don't need their permission to regulate yourself. High-rank individuals move slowly, not lazily, deliberately. Their movements are economical, their gestures minimal, their posture open. No wasted motion. Waste signals fear. Economy signals control. That's the key. When your nervous system is regulated, three things happen automatically. Your voice steadies, your eyes settle, your reactions slow. People feel this before they understand it, and feeling overrides logic. This is why calm people are followed, even when they say very little. You have a choice. Most people outsource their nervous system to the environment. Traffic controls them, messages control them, other people's emotions control them. They live in reaction. Reaction lowers rank, control raises it. That's the key. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot think your way into authority. You must regulate your way into it. No amount of clever language can override a dysregulated body. Your body always speaks first, so train it. When pressure hits, slow your breathing. Exhale longer than you inhale. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. These are not relaxation tricks, they are dominance behaviors. Calm body, clear signal. You have a choice. Notice how unstable people behave. They fidget, they interrupt, they rush. These are not personality quirks, they are nervous system leaks. And leaks reduce trust. People don't trust what feels unstable. That's the key.
Regulation is also why some people are respected even when they disagree. They don't spike, they don't escalate, they stay centered. Centered people can say hard things without triggering resistance because their body says, I am not a threat. And non-threats with boundaries are powerful. You have a choice. This chapter is not about calming down emotionally, it's about holding your baseline. Your baseline is your rank. If your baseline is anxious, people sense it. If your baseline is steady, people adjust. They slow down, they choose words carefully, they respect space, not because you demanded it, because your nervous system required it. That's the key. Regulation also protects you internally. A dysregulated system burns energy constantly. You feel tired, irritable, reactive. A regulated system conserves energy. Energy equals presence. Presence equals authority. Authority attracts opportunity. That's the chain. You have a choice. Here's a rule you must install immediately. Never make important decisions while your body is activated. Activated means fast breathing, tight chest, racing thoughts. That state is survival, not leadership. Leadership requires regulation. Pause, breathe, reset, then decide. That's the key. People don't follow the smartest person, they follow the most stable one. Stability creates trust. Trust creates influence. Influence creates power. All of it begins in the nervous system. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned to read emotion. You've learned to use silence. You've learned to stay calm. Now you understand why it works. Because your body sets your rank before your mouth opens. Master this, and you are no longer fighting for position. You are occupying it. Others feel it. They adjust automatically. You don't explain. You don't prove. You regulate. That's the key. Now that you understand how your internal state shapes external hierarchy, it's time to learn how this control shuts down manipulation entirely. Because once you stop reacting emotionally, manipulators lose their entry point. You've stabilized your system. You've raised your baseline. Now let's see what happens when emotional games stop working on you.
Manipulation feeds on reaction. Without reaction, it starves. That's the rule. Most people don't realize they are being manipulated, not because they are stupid, but because they are reactive. Manipulation doesn't need intelligence. It needs access. And reaction gives access. You have a choice. Manipulators rely on emotional hooks, guilt, urgency, fear, flattery, anger. These are not random. They are tools. And tools only work when you grab them. Stillness keeps your hands off the bait. That's the key. Every manipulation cycle has the same structure: trigger, reaction, control. Someone pushes an emotional button. You respond automatically. They adjust their behavior to steer you. That adjustment is leverage. Stillness breaks the cycle at the second step. No reaction, no adjustment, no control. You have a choice. Watch how manipulators behave when their tactics fail. They escalate, they repeat themselves, they change tone. Why? Because they are losing feedback. They don't know what's working anymore. Silence removes the signal manipulators depend on. That's the key. Most manipulation is subtle. It doesn't look like force. It looks like pressure. Why are you being difficult? I thought you cared. Just answer now. Everyone else already agreed. These phrases are not arguments. They are emotional traps. They aim to rush you out of control. Stillness steps out of the trap. You don't need their permission to pause. Here's a hard truth. Manipulators are predictable. They depend on predictability. They test reactions, they push boundaries, they watch responses. If you respond consistently, they map you. If you stay still, the map fails. That's the key. Most people try to explain their way out of manipulation. They think logic will save them. It won't. Manipulation doesn't operate on logic.
It operates on emotion. Silence is the counter. No explanation, no defense, no emotional engagement, just stillness. You have a choice. Stillness forces manipulators to reveal themselves. When guilt doesn't work, they try anger. When anger doesn't work, they try sympathy. When sympathy doesn't work, they retreat or expose intent. All of that information comes only if you don't react. Reaction hides manipulation. Stillness exposes it. That's the key. Understand this clearly. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. Manipulators try to assign you that job. If you don't respond, you're rude. If you don't comply, you're selfish. If you don't react, you're cold. These accusations are control attempts. Stillness rejects the assignment. You have a choice. When someone uses urgency, slow down. When someone uses guilt, go quiet. When someone uses pressure, pause. This is not avoidance, this is strategy. Strategy preserves leverage. That's the key. Most people get trapped because they believe silence equals agreement. It doesn't. Silence equals non-participation. You are refusing to play a rigged game, and manipulators cannot win games that aren't played. Stillness breaks the loop. You have a choice. Here's what breaking manipulation looks like in real life. You don't answer emotional messages immediately. You don't justify your boundaries. You don't react to provocations. You let discomfort exist. Discomfort is where manipulators lose patience. They need resolution. You don't. That asymmetry is power. That's the key. When you stop reacting, something interesting happens. Manipulators lose interest. Why? Because they are looking for return on energy. Reaction is return. Stillness is loss. And people abandon strategies that stop paying. Stillness trains people how to treat you. Let that sink in. Your reactions teach others what works on you. Your stillness teaches them what doesn't. You have a choice. This chapter is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming unavailable for emotional exploitation. Unavailable people are respected. Available people are used. Stillness is the boundary you don't have to announce. And boundaries enforced without emotion are the strongest kind. That's the key. Once manipulation stops working, dynamics change. People either step up respectfully or step away. Both outcomes are wins, because control returns to you. You are no longer reacting to emotional games. You are choosing engagement deliberately. You don't need their permission to disengage from nonsense. Stillness is not compliance. Stillness is refusal without conflict. You've now learned how stillness disarms manipulation, how it breaks cycles, how it exposes intent. You are becoming harder to move, harder to rush, harder to control. Now it's time to learn how time itself becomes leverage when you stop reacting. Because delay is not weakness. It's dominance. You've broken the manipulation cycle. Now let's talk about what happens when you control timing itself.
Speed is not power. Control of time is. Most people think dominance means acting first, speaking first, responding first. They're wrong. The one who controls timing controls the interaction. That's the key. You have a choice. Every time you respond immediately, you reveal urgency. Every time you delay, you reveal independence. Independence is power. Urgency says, I need this resolved now. Delay says, I decide when this moves. And the person who decides the pace sets the hierarchy. You don't need their permission to slow down. High-status individuals are never rushed, not because they don't care, but because they don't surrender control of time. They understand something critical. Whoever waits less wants more. That's the key. Look at negotiations. The side that answers too fast overpays. The side that agrees too quickly concedes leverage. Delay forces the other side to sit with uncertainty. Uncertainty creates pressure. Pressure creates mistakes. Stillness plus time is a multiplier. You have a choice. Most people are terrified of delay. They fear losing opportunities. They fear appearing uninterested. They fear being replaced. That fear is exactly what makes them rush, and rushing makes them easy to control. Delay filters seriousness. People who truly value you wait. People who want to use you push. That's the key. Understand this clearly. Immediate response is not politeness, it's exposure. You can be respectful without being instant. Respect does not require urgency. You don't need their permission to take time. Here's a rule you must adopt. Nothing important is decided in real time. Important decisions deserve space. Space creates clarity. Clarity protects leverage. That's the key. When someone pressures you with phrases like, "I need an answer now," "Just decide," "Why are you taking so long?" They are not asking, they are signaling need. Need weakens position. Delay reveals it. You have a choice. Delay also protects you from emotional decisions. When you wait, emotion cools. When emotion cools, logic returns. Most regret comes from fast decisions made under pressure. Stillness plus delay prevents regret. That's the key. Notice how powerful people use time. They don't answer messages instantly. They don't commit on the spot. They don't react to deadlines emotionally. They let time work on the other side. Time amplifies imbalance. If the other person is invested, delay increases their pressure, not yours. You have a choice. Delay also communicates self-worth. It says, "My attention is not unlimited." It says, "I have priorities beyond this moment." People respect what is scarce. Time is the scarcest resource you have. Giving it away impulsively lowers its value. That's the key. This doesn't mean you play games. It means you protect your pace. There is a difference. Playing games is manipulative. Controlling pace is strategic. Strategy is honest about self-interest. Stillness keeps it clean. You have a choice. Here's what dominance through delay looks like in practice. You read messages without responding immediately. You pause before answering questions. You say, "I'll get back to you," without guilt. No apology, no explanation. Explanation weakens delay. Silence strengthens it. That's the key. When you delay, people reveal how badly they want your response. They follow up, they push, they escalate. Each follow-up gives you information. Information is leverage. Immediate response gives you none. You have a choice. Most people are controlled by their own anxiety. They rush to relieve it. Delay forces you to sit with discomfort. That discomfort is training. Training builds dominance. Because if you can sit with uncertainty, others can't rush you. That's the key. Delay also changes how people treat you long-term. Once people realize you don't move on their schedule, they adjust. They ask more carefully. They pressure less. They respect boundaries. Not because you explained them, because your behavior enforced them. Stillness plus delay creates reputation. You have a choice. This chapter is not telling you to stall forever. It's teaching you to choose when to act. Action timed correctly beats fast action every time. You are not slow, you are deliberate. Deliberation is dominance. That's the key. You've now learned to control reaction, to read emotion, to use silence, to remain unreadable, to reject loudness, to leverage calm, to regulate your system, to break manipulation, and now to control time. With each step, your leverage has increased.
But there is another trap waiting for you, one that destroys delay, silence, and calm instantly: the need to explain yourself. You've mastered waiting. Now you must learn when not to speak at all.
Explanation is not clarity. Explanation is often surrender. Most people explain themselves for one reason: they want to be understood. That desire is human, but in emotional environments, it is dangerous. That's the key. You have a choice. Emotional people are not listening to understand you. They are listening to react to you. They are not asking questions to gain clarity. They are asking questions to regain control. And every explanation you give them feeds that control. Explanation becomes fuel. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. You cannot reason someone out of an emotional state. Logic does not calm emotion. Emotion resists logic. So, when you explain yourself to an emotional person, you are speaking the wrong language. That's the key. Watch what happens when you explain to someone who is upset. They interrupt. They twist your words. They ignore your main point. Then they ask for more explanation. Not because they're confused, because they're hooked. Explanation keeps the conversation alive. Stillness ends it. You have a choice. Emotional people interpret explanation as weakness. They hear, he's defensive, she's unsure, they're trying to justify themselves. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter. Perception creates position, and explanation lowers position. That's the key. Strong boundaries do not require long speeches. I've decided. This is not up for discussion. That doesn't work for me. Short, clear, final. Anything after that invites negotiation. And negotiation with emotional people is a trap. You don't need their permission to be done. Most people keep explaining because silence feels rude. They were trained to over-communicate, to smooth things over, to manage others' feelings. That training keeps them weak. You are not responsible for regulating other people's emotions. That's the key. Emotional people want engagement. They want back and forth. They want friction. Explanation gives them exactly that. Stillness gives them nothing. And nothing is unbearable for someone who feeds on reaction. You have a choice. Here's a rule you must internalize. If someone is emotional, explanation is wasted, not postponed, wasted, because they are not in a state to receive it. Explaining to emotion is like pouring water into fire and expecting it to organize itself. It won't. Silence is the extinguisher. That's the key. This does not mean you never explain. It means you choose who gets explanations. Calm people deserve clarity. Emotional people get boundaries. Boundaries are not explanations. They are decisions. You don't need their permission to decide. Watch what happens when you stop explaining. At first, people escalate. They accuse. They provoke. Why? Because their usual tool stopped working. Explanation was leverage. You removed it. Stillness is resistance without aggression. You have a choice. Most manipulation phrases are designed to pull explanations out of you. Why are you being like this? That doesn't make sense. You owe me an explanation. These are not requests, they're hooks. Hooks only work if you bite. Don't. A calm, neutral response ends the game. I've said what I needed to say. I'm not discussing this. This conversation is over. Then silence. That's the key. Notice how uncomfortable emotional people become when explanations stop. They lose traction. They lose direction. Because they were never after understanding. They were after engagement. Stillness denies them both.
You have a choice. Explanation also weakens you internally. The more you justify yourself, the more you doubt yourself. You start replaying decisions, second-guessing boundaries, rewriting history. Stillness protects certainty. Certainty stabilizes your nervous system. Stability raises your rank. That's the chain. That's the key. Understand this clearly. You do not need to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Explanation is effort spent on someone else's refusal to listen. That effort drains energy. Stillness conserves it. Energy is finite. You have a choice. When someone is calm and curious, explain if it serves clarity. When someone is emotional and accusatory, stop. Silence is not avoidance. It is refusal to engage in chaos. Refusal is power. That's the key. This chapter is not teaching arrogance. It's teaching economy. Words are resources. Spend them where they matter. Emotional people burn resources. Calm people invest them. You don't owe explanations for boundaries. Boundaries explain themselves. You don't owe emotional access to anyone. Access is earned through regulation. That's the key. When you stop explaining yourself, people change tactics. Some calm down. Some walk away. Some expose their real intent. All three outcomes benefit you, because clarity returns to the situation, and clarity always favors the disciplined. You have a choice. This chapter completes an important shift. You no longer react. You no longer follow emotion. You no longer rush. You no longer explain. You are becoming quiet, not empty, but deliberate. Deliberate people are respected. Now it's time to learn what happens when you combine all of this and let results, not reactions, do the talking. You've stopped explaining. You've held your ground. Now let your actions speak louder than your emotions.
Here is the truth most people never learn. The world does not reward emotion. It rewards control. Every time you react, you reveal yourself. Every time you stay still, you gain leverage. Every time you choose silence, someone else exposes their hand. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is discipline. Stillness is power held in reserve. From this moment forward, slow down your responses, shorten your words, withdraw your emotional energy. Let others rush. Let others explain. Let others react. Your challenge is simple and ruthless. For the next 30 days, do not react immediately to anything emotional. Pause, observe, choose. Because the one who controls their reactions controls their life.